Good afternoon, everybody. Scott Sternberg here, along with Justin Alsterberg, Mike Finkelstein, and Susie Montero. We're really excited about this presentation, which is going to begin in about 5 minutes. Just wanted to remind everyone to please mute your lines, and please feel free to chat questions to me during this. I'll be monitoring the chat, or to email them to scott@SNW.LAW, which is the email address that sent you the invite. So again, we'll get started a couple minutes after 3:30. Hope everybody's doing well.
I did. I've got it right here. That's what I did. Figured out for there tonight.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Somebody has this.
I think it's because
Did you have your sound out?
No, my sound's off.
All right. Little technical glitch there. Good afternoon, everybody. Scott Sternberg here. We are pleased to welcome you to our webinar on business interruption claims. I have here with me Justin Alsterberg, who is Sternberg, Naccari & White's managing partner for litigation. Mike Finkelstein, who's a partner in our litigation group, and Susie Montero, who's also a partner in our litigation group. Before we start the webinar, I want to take a minute to read over this disclaimer that we have already put up for quite some time now, but just so that it's very clear, this seminar is not intended to be financial advice or create an attorney-client relationship. It's for informational purposes only. Please consider consulting with a financial advisor or a professional or your lawyer, whether it's us or another lawyer, before making any kind of personal or business decision that we might discuss today. This is the third webinar that we've done in about a week. And so we want to make sure that everybody knows about our previous Small Business Administration loan webinar, which is on our website, SNW.LAW. Then we have our CARES Act webinar that we did 3 days ago, and was a big success. Almost 200 people participated in that one, and it's been watched hundreds of times online. So we're also going to be starting a regular Wednesday webinar series where we talk about issues facing businesses, and we're going to turn that into a podcast as well. So please pay attention to our website and see what's going on. Also, Facebook. We have a Sternberg, Naccari & White Facebook page. We're on Twitter and LinkedIn. The only thing we're not on is Snapchat, just not our thing, gotta say. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started, Mike.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Justin Alsterberg. Our goals for you today, I'm going to start with the last one. We're going to get this done in under an hour. We're just going to hit the broad points for you in terms of business interruption claims, what the type of coverage is, how you can identify if you have the type of coverage and whether you can even make those claims, the process by which you would be making those claims, and then the types of things that you could recover. We're also going to give you a 40,000-foot view of it on issues particular to COVID-19 and how those would affect the type of claims you can make in this process, assuming you do have the coverage within your own insurance policies, which would be within your commercial insurance policies for your business. And then finally, we're also going to give you your best practices on how to document and get your information together, assuming you do have the type of coverage and it's the type of thing that you might be able to go forward and proceed with. What is business interruption insurance? A lot of it is what it says it is. I mean, the purpose of the coverage is to protect your business from lost revenue, lost profits as a result, in this case, of a disaster or an emergency. And other times, if it wasn't a disaster or emergency, the most common example is if your business sustains a fire or that type of damage that causes the loss. What's interesting about these times is that the most common trigger, which is a big insurance word that you're going to hear a lot of for this type of coverage, is when an insured property, which would be your business, sustains a direct physical loss from a disaster. Most common examples that we're used to down here in Louisiana and that most of the case law and jurisprudence talks about is when your business sustains a hurricane. We've all experienced that. But that's not all of it. And now we've used an example, as you can see in the slide. Some policies also provide coverage when an adjoining property sustains damage, which causes your business to close or be shut down. And we're all very familiar with the most recent example that has happened down here is the Hard Rock collapse. A lot of the adjoining businesses that had to close for a period of time, and some of which still remain closed because of that, also had business interruption claims that they could make under their policy. The first question you obviously want to find out, and what you want to know is, does my business have business interruption coverage? And it's not something that your business necessarily has by default. We're going to show you an example coming up in some additional slides, but whenever you're looking to determine whether you have coverage and you go to your policy, the first place you want to start is something called the declarations pages. Some of you may be familiar with this, some of you may not, but your declarations pages are going to list the specific types of insurance that you have purchased and the monetary limits of each coverage. One thing that we hear a lot of, and we've heard it even before this situation, people always want to say, oh, we're fully covered, or we have all the coverage. First of all, there is no such thing as being fully covered, okay? And we're going to help you navigate that and explain that a little bit. That's why it's always important to look at your policy and see exactly what coverage you do and do not have, even aside from instances like these. Then from there, and we're going to talk about this more, my partner Susie's going to get into this a little bit more after I talk about identifying whether you even have this coverage. But whether or not you have coverage for business interruptions isn't the only question. There also has to be an event or occurrence which would again trigger coverage under a covered event under your policy. So what we have here, this is an example of a relatively standard declarations page or portions of declarations pages from a CGL, also known as a commercial general liability policy, which all business owners should already have. And this is the most likely place in which you would have business interruption coverage. This is a standard first page, but the declarations pages have multiple pages in most policies. And the way, again, you look at that, you see the red arrow, it says at the top, declarations page. On this page, however, if you look at it, you see multiple coverages and things like general liability, hired auto liability, employee dishonesty, things of that nature. You can also see at the top, it's only page 1 of 3. So looking at this, right off the bat, if you look at it too fast, you might come to the conclusion, oh, I don't have business interruption coverage. However, go to the next slide. On this policy, then page 2, there you have it, business income and extra expense. That's another word or words for business interruption coverage. And this is something that we have to caution you on because different insurance companies under different policies and different ways of writing it will use different terminology. But so in this particular policy, which was for a client of ours that we had, that was actually a bakery who sustained a loss by fire. Okay, so it was something separate, and we did handle their business interruption claim. They had 12 months of actual loss sustained. In that loss, it turned out after the fire, it didn't completely destroy their building. If it had, they would have had up to 12 months of coverage for their lost revenues and profits if it had taken over a year to be back in business. In their particular case, they were not totally out of business. They had less business for about 3 months, and we ended up handling their claim and getting their recovery for the 3 months of revenue losses that they had as they were recovering from the fire, getting back operating, and even when they were fully back operating, the loss of sales that they had as they had to rebuild their business. I'm now going to turn it over to my partner, Susie, who's going to talk about the next important steps in evaluating your business interruption coverage.
Thank you, Justin. One of the things that I wanted, if you could go back to the last slide that Justin was speaking on, one of the things I wanted to point out is even if you do have this coverage, it is probably not unlimited. you will see under the policy that this provided a $70,000 limit of insurance. So Justin, am I correct that this client, regardless of how long the interruption was, or regardless of how much they asserted their claim was, the limits of the policy would have been $70,000?
And you are correct on that.
Okay. So going forward, the next question that, which is the $150,000 or $150 million question is my business covered for interruptions due to COVID-19? The short answer is we don't know and can't tell you without a review of your policy. Each policy will have specific coverages and specific exclusions, and you'll have to look at your specific exclusions and your specific policy to determine whether or not this interruption is covered by your policy. We say that there has been an industry trend to exclude business interruption coverage for viruses. This arose back in around 2005, 2006, following the SARS epidemic, which really did not necessarily hit the United States that much. I think it hit more a chain of supply businesses, but it didn't hit as certainly like the COVID-19. Those exclusions may or may not be applicable in this case, even if there is an exclusion for a virus. Each claim for business interruption is unique and it's specific to the underlying facts with regard to your business and the specific language of your insurance policy. Next slide. One of the next issues is does the governor declaring a state of emergency affect your business interruption coverage? Many policies do include specific language regarding emergency declarations. The declaration in and of itself does not automatically result in a situation where your business interruption claim is within the scope of the policy, and it doesn't necessarily exclude it also. The business owners are encouraged to read the policy language in detail, in detail, and consult with a business attorney or an insurance attorney with regard to the specific situation or the specific facts regarding your business and your coverage. The next issue that we wanted just to bring to the forefront for you, and this is far too vast and deep to get into in a webinar, as well as in any kind of a PowerPoint presentation, but how will my insurance company try to avoid paying me? And they will. We are anticipating that, and have already heard from clients who have submitted claims that these claims are being denied. And you should anticipate that more likely than not at the outset, your insurer will in fact deny your business interruption claim. There are several different avenues which we believe that they are going to use to try to avoid paying you. The first being that there was no direct loss, no direct physical injury or episode that happened to your business which would trigger coverage under the policy. For example, your business wasn't struck by lightning, thereby preventing you from being in business. There was not a fire. There was not the sprinkler system going off and destroying all of your files. Whether or not the presence of a virus in your business is going to be the kind of trigger that triggers the policy is going to be something that is not going to be decided by insurance companies. It's going to be decided by a court. It's going to be decided in the courts. And these claims are being filed across the nation as we speak with regard to whether or not a virus would trigger coverage under a policy. There are other exclusions which we think that the insurance companies will be looking to avoid paying you. Again, each policy is different, so we would have to look at your specific policy and your specific exclusions to make a determination of which ones, if any, are applicable. Making a claim. Many of you, if you're tuning into this, you are probably a business owner. and you have probably gone through the process of filing a business claim for an insurance claim for a variety of things in the past. In this specific instance, this is a whole new ball of wax when it comes to insurance claims. We would strongly urge you to consult with an attorney prior to submitting any claim to your insurer. I am hearing, and some of my partners have heard of our clients who have either relied upon their agent, their insurance agent, or in many cases their accountants to help them make their submit their claims to their insurance companies. While I'm sure that accountants and insurance agents are well-meaning in this, they are not attorneys, they are not insurance attorneys, and they will not come to the table with the unique knowledge to be able to craft your claim to best fit the facts of your insurance policy, the facts of your that are unique and germane to your business, as well as the applicable law. So that being said, these business interruption claims, as the slide says, are going to be highly fact sensitive, and you should make them with a review to the policy language and consideration of it. It's imperative that your claim factually comport with the facts of your business as well as the coverage in your policy.
All right, so this is Michael Finkelstein. I'll be taking over from here. Thank you, Susie. And just as a reminder to everyone, you can go ahead and ask us questions using the chat function. And as they come up, we will be answering them, so that if there's something question that's raised while we're talking about that subject, we can answer it at that same time instead of coming back to it at the end. So if you have questions, just feel free, drop them in that chat, and we will have Scott as the moderator be getting to those questions. So the first issue that you might be wondering is, what is our goal here? And what's the goal of all this discussion about submitting claims? Well, so the insurance companies require, and Louisiana law requires, that you make this showing, and it's called satisfactory proof of loss. And that's a term that they use in this industry to make sure that you've sufficiently documented your company's losses so that they're verifiable and so that you can prove what those losses are. Now, this is obviously done with documentation, but this is the thing that we want to have our eyes on as we move forward with pursuing, or as your business moves forward with pursuing its claims for lost revenue. So the important thing here is to document your claim. Document everything. So the importance of documentation will become very clear. So for example, if we look at a business's profit and loss statement on a yearly basis, it might be the case that when you look at the 2020 profit and loss for your business versus the 2019 profit and loss, there might not be much fluctuation at the end of the year, or it might be very minimal. Now, this could happen, for instance, if there's a business boom after stay-at-home orders are lifted and everyone wants to go out to the restaurants to eat, go out to movie theaters, watch movies, and really patronize the businesses that are suffering during this time. So what this effect will have at the end of the year is a diminished effect that's visible on a yearly profit and loss statement. Now, this highlights the importance of tracking these kinds of metrics on a monthly basis. So what you can do right now that would be really important for your claims are to track these kinds of things and your losses on a monthly basis, and you can do this right now. Now, the claims that you might have are going to be very specific to your industry, but the overarching ideas of tracking information are going to be similar. So for instance, here are things that you're going to want to document as you move forward with your claims. The first thing is you're going to want to track dates that your business might be closed or dates that stay-at-home orders are in place. I feel like it's a good idea for you to write these things down. You can keep a separate notebook, but you're going to want to keep these kinds of documents and these kinds of records so that you can come back to them later, and then you can track it against your own records and make sure how they comport. Any kind of changes in stay-at-home orders, you're going to want to track those things too if they become more burdensome on restaurants. So for instance, At first, restaurants were allowed to open in certain areas, but with reduced seating capacity. And later, they were closed entirely and reduced to only takeout orders. So this is something, for instance, that you might want to just track and make note of as it comes along. The next thing is tracking any kind of contract or commitment that's canceled. So it might be a contract for a certain purchase order. It might be various commitments to engage in business with your company. So track those things. The next item is to track knowledgeable employees' contact information. Now, this might seem kind of silly, but because they're your employees after all, but the fallouts from the shutdowns right now are very uncertain. And if your business is looking at some kind of sustained closures for 2 or 3 months, it might be the case that you're not able to keep those employees on payroll. Now, we would suggest that if you look at our seminar from earlier this week, there are potential other resolutions to that, but it's important to keep this information because maybe even there's one particular employee who deals with another company that has ordered a significant amount of sales from you in the past. And so that employee would be the most knowledgeable one for those losses. So it's important to track, for instance, if you have accounts on which there's account managers, and keep those employees' information in a segregated area so that you have that to look back on later. And that would become very helpful in the event that your claim ever has to go to litigation. Now, some industry-specific examples. For restaurants, you're going to want to track receipts, sales, and revenues, of course, as you would want to do for all business. But you might want to also track items that have to be thrown out or donated. So for instance, if you have food that's going bad, you might have had to throw some of it out, but you might be able to donate some of it to a food bank or somehow otherwise help people in need. Now, this kind of ties into the claim that, or the idea that you might also have a claim against your commercial general liability policy in addition to your lost revenue. So the important thing, again, is just tracking and documenting any kind of loss that you have right now. For professional services, you can track business that's being lost. For example, appointments that aren't being rebooked and things that you're not capturing later. So this is going to be lost revenue that, unlike revenue that, for instance, restaurant sales that never happen, again, this is business that you're not going to capitalize on. And so that it is still being lost. For example, in the tourism industry, you might want to track conferences that won't be rescheduled or hotel rooms that you're losing business on. And the next thing goes to a best practice, which is that right now, I know y'all are all hurting. Businesses are really hurting through this. So one thing that you can do if you have the downtime while sales are low or operations are low is you can spend the downtime gearing up your business claim and other insurance claims that you might have. What you can do is you can reconstruct previous months. This will help you, for instance, if you're able to document the 6 months of sales and revenues prior to COVID-19 shutdowns, then you can show exactly what kind of losses you sustained once COVID-19 shutdowns happened. For instance, also, if your business is seasonal and might be, for instance, let's say something like the relating to St. Patrick's Day, which was right around the same time. Well, you would have to then look back to what you did the previous year in order to be able to show the diminished income for this year. So you can spend this time reconstructing those previous months or years if you're in a seasonal business. You can figure out your monthly revenues prior to coronavirus and help document the losses that hit later during shutdowns. This is also, just on a cathartic note, this can be a good distraction from downtime, and it's a good way to spend resources and dedicate employees' time while business operations are down for COVID-19.
So what we can do to help you with your business interruption issues, we can review your insurance policy. Chances are you have an electronic copy of it. If you don't, you can email your insurance broker and they'll have one available. Or, obviously you could go into the office, but I know we're all trying to stop that. as Mike was just talking about, you can make sure that you have the evidence that you need. Compile it, take notes, and make sure that your notes are electronic so that they can't be lost. So that way we can make sure that we document any losses that you might have. You can compile the evidence and get it to us. And with that evidence, we can help you submit the claim to the insurer. And that's really important, as Susie talked about, because when you make that claim to the insurer, we want to make sure that we are actually making the right claim and not making admissions that we don't actually need to make, right? Our firm can work with the insurer to make sure that we've met that satisfactory proof of loss. We can negotiate a settlement. We could work with the insurer on some kind of interim payment and final payment. And finally, if they won't pay up, which happens a fair amount with insurance companies, as I'm sure you're aware, we can file and prosecute a lawsuit for your business losses. And we have a lot of experience representing businesses in particular business plaintiff work at this firm. And we're very proud of our record. In fact, Mike and I had a judgment this week in federal court for a business against another business that had broke a contract that's going to be worth several $1 million, we believe. So we're very excited about that, and we have a lot of experience with it. We've got a question coming in. Is it too late if we already filed with a broker and are getting calls from the insurance company for the business interruption claim? Justin?
It is not too late. The biggest thing that that we've kind of talked about here today, and that we want to make you aware of, and we handle these all the time once the claim has already been submitted. We get clients that call us after a claim has been denied and ask us to come take a look. It is not too late. The key thing is getting in, if you're already having or anticipating denial of coverage or issues with your insurance company, is getting your information to counsel, whether it be us or your own attorney that's capable of handling it, so they can get up to speed, review what has been submitted, and figure out what needs to be supplemented and why. We have a lot of clients, look, a lot of your business owners, especially small business owners, you're used to doing everything. You're used to being your own IT person. You're used to being, your own delivery driver sometimes if the need be. That being said, it never hurts, and there's never a problem with us coming in and taking a look, especially if your claim has already been denied. If you have submitted it and they haven't had any questions yet, there's still an opportunity, because the record of your claim can always be supplemented, clarified, and explained. And additional documentation can be provided. So it is never too late, even if it's already gone to the point where there's been a denial of coverage.
Great. And I guess more questions will probably come in. We've already gone through most of the presentation, but I'll pose a question that someone emailed to me earlier. It's been going around the internet, according to this person, that these are definitely not covered and we shouldn't even bother, right? So why should we bother to even make one of these claims at this time?
Susie, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah. There's the internet is like a bathroom wall. Some of the stuff that's written on it is really poetic, and some of the stuff written on it is the ramblings of a drunk. So don't believe everything you've read on the internet. That you are not going to be even able to determine if you are eligible to recover under your policy without making a claim. There is a time limit within which you have to make a claim. I don't think it is in anybody's business's best practices in order to avoid that or try to not take advantage of the possibility that you may have coverage under the policy. Most of you are going to be gathering a lot of this information that you're going to need to submit your claim for SBA loans or the PPP loans. So you're not going to, the insurance claim or the business interruption claim is not going to be duplicative work for you. Another thing that we're hearing about is whether or not there's going to be legislation by the Louisiana State Legislature, the United States Congress, or any other state house to require insurance companies to cover it under the business interruption policies. I think that there are going to be state houses that are going to try to pass that legislation. My best guess is that all of that legislation is going to be deemed to be unconstitutional under the United States federal Constitution. There is this tricky little clause that they wrote in the U.S. Constitution back when they wrote it that says no state shall pass any law impairing the obligations of contracts. And what your insurance policy is a contract between you and your insurer. It's a private contract between private entities. I don't think that business owners are going to get relief through legislation. But they are going to be getting, there's going to be several different ways or angles that people are going to be trying to get into these policies. But the bottom line is, for the question, why bother, is if you don't make your claim, you're definitely not going to recover under your policy.
And just to follow up on that as well, you know, as we were preparing for this, a lot of the things I've seen written on the internet and blog postings are insurance industry-based postings. So of course, those kinds of postings are going to say there is no coverage because they don't want people prosecuting these claims. And it's really important to understand this. Your CGL policy, it could be 30 pages. It could be 60 pages. We have clients that have a CGL policy over 500 pages. No two insurance policies are alike. Okay, based on the type of business you run, the type of coverage you're purchasing, the type of risk that you have. And so to make just an absolute blanket statement, that's exactly what the industry wants you to think, so that they're not bombarded with these claims. But until you actually really look at your policy, what it covers, what it doesn't cover, what specific exclusions there are, and this even varies on a state-by-state basis. Things in Louisiana are different than things in other states, and there are different endorsements and different forms for different states modifying policies. Until you actually look at it and get down into the nitty-gritty, you cannot simply make a blanket answer that, oh, there's no coverage.
So we have a question about PPP loans. I don't really feel comfortable answering those questions at this time without Keith here, you know, because he's the expert. We can certainly try. But I think we should probably keep the webinar to business interruption claims. Any other questions from the audience, or any other points that we want to make from here?
And one thing I'll say, the question about the PPP loan is from Dane. Dane, we will contact you directly about those questions that you have about your PPP loans.
Okay. Any other questions from the group? All right. Well, look. We are going to put this seminar on our website, or this webinar, excuse me, on our website. But the most important thing that you can take away from this webinar is our contact information. It's at SNW.LAW. You can look us all up. Our emails and our direct lines are there. This law firm is working even through this crisis. Everybody's working either from the office or from home, or however they feel comfortable. Given the crisis. Anita Zimmer had a question about mitigating losses. Is there a duty to mitigate losses? The answer to that is yes, right? Right, y'all?
Absolutely. In almost any insurance claim, whether it be for personal injury, property damage, or business interruption, there's a duty to mitigate losses. If for example, if you have a grocery store and grocery stores are considered essential businesses, they can stay open. If you just shuttered your doors and said, you know, I'm just going to file this as a business interruption claim, you're assuming that there is coverage. It's going to be significantly impacted by the fact that you didn't take steps to mitigate your losses, which is stay open when you could. And that mitigating losses will encompass more than just businesses that are essential business, but any businesses that can mitigate their losses in any way. we spoke about this briefly, and before we, meaning Justin, Michael, and I. We don't know whether or not if you're eligible for SBA loans and whether or not you take advantage of the loan forgiveness programs that are going to be out there, whether or not that will be able to be used as an offset for a business interruption claim. But to the extent that you may be eligible for those SBA loans, that might be considered something that you could do to mitigate your loss.
Sure.
Yes, and there was a question that was actually posed to me by one of my clients earlier that kind of touches on this, that we haven't really talked about on the mitigation issue. Business interruption doesn't necessarily mean that you're closed. So if you're mitigating your losses, that you're open or that you're doing as much as you can, that does not mean that you do not have a claim. You still have a claim for your lost revenues, even if you're trying to mitigate your losses, okay, by staying open. But you do still have losses that you're incurring because your business is less.
Good point.
Yeah, I was echoing exactly something I was going to say, which is that during this time, it's inherently difficult for a restaurant or some other business that needs that kind of foot traffic that's closed right now to mitigate its losses. So there should be some comfort in understanding that issue is going to be difficult. But I think that there's a lot of room for that to err on the side of the business owners because it's so difficult right now to get those businesses, to get those orders coming in, and to make those sales. So that is going to be an evolving situation. I think that will play out during the course of what we see with this particular wave of business interruption claims. But it's a great question.
And something we've been saying in response to a lot of questions, about this crisis is this is just unprecedented. Like, there hasn't been a crisis like this in 100 years, basically. And so we might need to make some new law. We may need to find some file some motions and find some judges who feel that this is a qualified claim under business interruption policies. But we won't know until we get a chance to examine the policy, see if we can find a way, and if we can, advise you on the best way to make that claim. As I was saying, I'm sorry, Mike.
Yeah, I was just thinking of one more point I wanted to make in terms of mitigation, which is that to the extent that you can make some kind of adjustment to your business to keep it going, to help mitigate those losses as they're happening, you should by all means try to make those. It'd be better to get that cash flow coming in now so you deal with less problems than rely on a business interruption claim to solve things on the back end. So while the business interruption claim can certainly help in that regard, if you can make adjustments now, and especially talking about the availability of certain SBA loans like Keith discussed in the conference on Monday, if you can take steps to make your business more hurricane proof or COVID proof, those are things that you can do now that will not only help you to mitigate your losses and cut against that standard if an insurance company tries to say that you didn't do that, but they're things that will help you in the future. If you migrate to cloud storage, well, if we have, and I hope we don't, if we have a hurricane hit in August, well, you're prepared to weather that storm better because you've taken steps to get your business on the cloud or do those other things that will help you develop and keep you protected from any kind of future incidents.
Yeah, and I think, just one last thing I'd like to leave y'all with, using a baseball analogy. And as Susie talked about, your insurance policy is a contract between you and your insurance company. If you're in a dispute with the insurance company and there's two interpretations of the policy, one which would be in favor of the insurance company saying there is no coverage, and one which is in your favor, which said there is coverage, Louisiana courts have consistently ruled that the tie goes to the runner, and you as the policyholder are the runner. So that's why it's always important to have the policy really looked at and determine, is this claim really actually 100% excluded, or is there an argument that could be made that could show, hey, there should be coverage here, tie goes to the runner, and there is coverage. So just kind of wanted to leave you all with that.
And as I was saying earlier, all of our information is on our website at SNW.LAW. You can find all of us there. You can find our contact information there. Our Facebook page is very active. We have a 24-hour chat bot on our website that'll allow you to ask questions or get immediate help. We will be doing our Wednesday webinar series starting next Wednesday. We've got great resources as it relates to the Paycheck Protection Program or the CARES Act and the SBA loan program currently on our website, and we've got even more content coming. So, we are a law firm that is built for this crisis. We are built to operate in this realm virtually, and although the four of us are here in this conference room today, this is the most people we've had in the office in quite a few weeks, and we expect that it's going to be like this for quite some time. So just think about us if you need help, even if it's for a 5-minute phone call. We want to be there for you. So we'll send out a recording of this to everyone who attended, and we'll also keep you in mind for our future webinars. I just want to thank Justin, Mike, and Susie for doing this. We've had a very interesting number of questions about business interruption, and so we want to make sure that we cover them. But send us your policies. We'll take a look. Everybody be safe. Stay inside. Wash your hands. And thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Please.